We writers are natural storytellers. Why else would we want to forge countless pagefuls of content that hardly anyone but ourselves will realistically ever read? We all have this drive within us to concoct marvelous tales and to enthrall audiences with characters and situations that come only from our imaginations. Sometimes, though, our love of the creative craft extends beyond the confines of fiction. Sometimes we simply cannot help ourselves but to invent tales about our lives in desperate attempts to build up ourselves to a potential audience. Donald and I know this well.
So this one time I was at the gas station, and I went inside to get me a gigantic cup of soda because, I value my health. And this one guy was in line, and let me tell you, he was the biggest racist.
Oh, really? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, he had a shirt on that said "Proud Racist," and he had tattoos all over his arms and his chest, I assume, that said, "I love being racist." And he kept saying the most racist jokes. He talked about his racist family, and he had the most racist ringtone when his girlfriend called. Oh boy, was this man racist.
He sure sounds racist. What happened next?
Well, he got to the front of the line, started complaining about something in the gas station, and then started blaming other racists for it, like the dirty racist he was. I went up to the racist and told him to knock it off, and then he started screaming the most racist things at me.
Oh no! Wait, you're white, though.
Yeah, I know, but still I wouldn't stand for this. So I punched him in the face and knocked him flat on his racist butt, and everyone applauded.
Wow, what an amazing story. You did really good there, Donald.
Oh, never mind me. I just want to help my community.
We all like to embellish the truth sometimes, and no one likes to embellish more than a writer. Our job is to enrapture, to get readers lost in faraway worlds, and sometimes we ourselves get lost in the worlds we create. The divide between truth and fiction becomes blurred, and we find ourselves buying our own con.
What about you, David? Anything notable happened to you this week?
Well, I got a bigger than expected tax refund, and I decided to treat myself with a fancy dinner. I was listening to the radio when driving there and called in their special rewards line number, only to find I was the lucky winner of the $5,000 grand prize.
Whoa, really?
Yes! I decided to capitalize on all that good luck by going to Las Vegas, and I won big. I tell ya, big. Like, we're talking millions upon millions of dollars in the jackpots, craps, blackjack, slot machines, pinball. I was winning them all. I felt like I was on top of the world. And then I heard of the big hurricane that hit my college town.
Oh no! Wait, your college town in Nebraska?
Yes, Nebraska. So of course they weren't prepared for hurricane damage. Once I heard that these people were in such desperate need, I stopped right there in the casino, called the Nebraska state government, and donated my entire winnings to the disaster relief effort of my college town. And everyone applauded.
Wow, that's incredible, David. I'm so proud of you.
A lot of writers become storytellers to feel a sense of fulfillment, like it is their only method to contribute to society. So naturally, this yearning for fulfillment can express itself in other, less genuine ways. But that is the trap a natural storyteller is prone to fall into.
Sorry I'm late, by the way. I was held up on my way here.
Oh, really? What happened?
There was a big car accident. Like, several sedans and SUVs just got flattened and crinkled like candy wrappers. Most of the people made it out okay, but this one car had an oil leak and started to catch fire with the driver still inside.
Oh no! What happened to them?
The police hadn't arrived yet and everyone was still in their cars, but I could tell this person didn't have a lot of time. I got out of my own car, ran out to the burning car wreck, and yanked it off the door that had been damaged by the car accident. I managed to get the person out of the car and carried them to safety just when the fire hit the fuel line. The car exploded behind us, but we were both safe. And everyone applauded.
Wow! Such a true hero! But wait, who applauded exactly if you were the only one out of your car?
The people still in their cars? Yeah, I could see them clapping through their windows.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Storytelling is our modus operandi. It is the code we live by. We love captivating audiences, and we often find ourselves captivated by our own fabrications. We as writers must learn to find the balance, sort out truth from fiction, and become true to ourselves. Our writing is a manifestation of our conscience, and so we only need our writing to be true to who we really are.
Who are you talking to, by the way?
Oh, I'm talking to the listeners. I gave this speech at a community college recently, showing them how we writers think and act. Once I finished it, everyone applauded.
Well, yeah, that's just called being polite.
Right, of course. It wasn't that they were so moved by my speech. They were just being polite, of course.
Of course.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show with a classic 3-act structure. The first act, where we set up how dumb we are.
Yes.
The second act, where we deal with matters way above our comprehension.
Yes.
And the third act, where we inevitably fall to our deaths.
What a story! I am so intrigued. I am so enraptured.
Enraptured. Sure, that's the word I would use.
And anyways, speaking of stories we've written too, whether in real life or otherwise, what we at the Ritwood have written. What about you? You're first. What have you got? You got something? I'm sure you got a lot, I'm sure. Tell us all the stuff you've written. I want to hear all of it.
In the latest chapter of me refusing to adult, the verb, dragging my feet about submitting the resume that I finished since last time.
Yay, we're so proud.
Since I know that most fall through the gaps thanks to overstressed hiring managers, overstressed, underpaid, and underappreciated hiring managers.
Welcome to America.
I want to ensure it is at least foolproof from what I can control, so there's still a little refining to be done.
Yes.
I hit my word count goal for April.
Yay, something.
Doing nothing of terrible creative import.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
There's no surprise. I'm putting my foot down for the month of May, which, as we're recording, is the month of May. Probably will post later in the month of May, and insisting that nothing except the projects I've been not working enough count towards the next one.
Yes, stop ranking baseball players.
No more baseball write-ups or Pokemon analyses to goose the numbers, y'all.
I didn't know you were counting that anyways. I don't know whether to trust you about, I made this goal either. Who knows if it actually counted?
No, it's never been just one of those.
It's been sometimes both baseball and Pokemon.
No, this month was baseball and a little bit else. And then other months it's Pokemon and a little bit else.
Right.
So,
okay.
Anyway, yes, I need to get over myself and, make it a point. I need to write.
You need to write.
Well, because if it's not a need, then it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
And why would I be, adequate as a co-host on the Ritwit?
Right.
If I were not truly
I'll kick
richer.
you off and get someone else, huh?
You've always mentioned Carl.
I have mentioned Carl, and you've always mentioned Fred, so.
That's true. But with Fred, I'd probably do a different podcast about music because
that's true.
You can't really bring that.
It's true. Fred is a musical fellow. That fellow.
Anyway, that's what I've written.
May he rest in peace.
Speaking
for more on how he died, listen to the
100th episode of the Ritwit.
Right.
For what it's worth, though, this month I'm setting my word count goal a little bit lower because I've got a Memorial Day vacation coming up, and so I don't anticipate to be doing much writing there.
That's true. But for me, though, as well as the usual progress on Testonauts, I'm almost to the climax.
Woo, the best part, the climax! Here I come!
Oh, God. Oh, God. I've joined several Facebook groups about writing and podcasting. And they've offered me some really great tips on how to promote my stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things to help with podcast is cross-promoting. I managed to get a hold of the I Know Dino podcast, which is a great name.
Do you know Dino?
I do know Dino.
I don't know Dino.
Well, you better know Dino. So
I'm lost.
You listen to the I Know Dino podcast, so you too can know Dino.
I see. This is why I'm not on Paleobites, listeners. But go listen to that if you're interested.
Oh, a lot of the people who are on Paleobites don't know about that. So just have a good back and forth with them. But anyways, they agreed to promote my show Paleobites on their show as long as I promote their show on mine. Well, now I'm promoting it on two of my podcasts.
Bam!
Double whammy, so ha! if you have a real hankering for dinosaur-related podcast content, and you think my show Paleobites is too goofy and not as focused on science, well, 1, how dare you? And 2, check out the I Know Dino podcast, hosted by dinosaur aficionado husband and wife Garrett and Sabrina, that goes into the dinosaur news and science, stays up to date on new finds and discoveries, and is overall quite a bit of fun. The 2 hosts are very nice and very cool. They even have a dinosaur-themed wedding. Relationship goals.
Hashtag relationship goals. Good.
So as of we're recording this episode, the cross-promotion campaign is only a day in, and it looked like the stats were going great. Then my podcast hosting thing decided to be like, oh, we can't show you the stats right now. There seems to be some sort of issue. For more on the issues, check out our updated blog about the issue. I checked the updated blog.
It wasn't updated.
It was not updated. Last update was April 22nd. Where it was like, we resolved the last issue. And I'm like, okay, what about this issue? I want to know.
All in due time.
I did get a lot of more downloads, but I get those occasionally. Like, it could be a fluke. The only way I'll truly know is if I get consistently more downloads. Like, the rate rises. I'd love to see that, Libsyn.
I want to see the stats. I'm paying you money. Show me.
I really hope that by the time they fix the issue, it just didn't count the stats from when they there's not a fallow period where they just don't count anything. Yeah, because of the issue. I don't know if they have an issue with showing the stats or counting the stats.
If it's counting the stats, then you're host. But when does this cross promotion thing end?
Next week. So next Wednesday, which by the way will be 2 weeks before
this episode even comes out.
Yeah. So wait, no, 1 week. Wait, no, 2 weeks. Wait.
This is the third of our set.
Okay, and then the first of our set comes out a week after we record, or on Wednesday. So yes, 2 weeks before this is over, which is about the time
that we talk about ridding and not math.
This is probably the amount of time Libsyn will take to finish their thing. I'll go through it. It's fixed the day of. I have 0 downloads all week because I didn't count all of them.
All right, so we'll prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So if you don't have a good deal with this, sure, I Know Dino appreciates you cross-promoting him, and I'm sure you're grateful for it. Would you do something like this again?
Oh, yeah. I'm like in 6 months.
Even in the worst-case scenario?
In 6 months, I'll probably ask the same podcast again. They're the biggest dinosaur podcast in the world.
I obviously don't know Dino because I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, so I didn't know Dino either.
Ironic, considering you're the host of Paleobites. Anyway.
But that's more of a casual show, though. Like, they go into all the different things. Like,
so all of those things, those theories spouted by Jack Horner, yes, I do listen to Paleobites.
Yeah, arch nemesis of the show, anyway.
They fabricated rivalry.
And
speaking of... No.
Well, since they know Dino, They probably love Jack Horner, and it's all power to them. But
different strokes for different folks.
I hate Jack Horner. I would want to pull my arm off just so I had something to hit him with. And speaking of injuries like that, we're talking about physical diagnosis inclusivity. Physical diagnosis inclusivity.
Yeah, obviously some people have these things happen to them later in life. Sometimes they're born with them. But how to do justice for those people.
Yes.
In your stories.
Yes. So, there is a basic body plan that we humans are kind of meant to have, but unfortunately not everyone has it. Mm-hmm. Some people are born with defects to get permanent injuries. Some people are deaf or blind or both or even more beyond.
Some people have parts in the wrong places.
Some people have a deformed limb or no limbs at all, or diabetes, or some other disease will stick with them forever. Like, how would you use characters with these different diagnoses in your writing?
Those with ailments have their own cross to bear.
Mm-hmm.
And at the first flashbang moment we see them, it's likely that we feel pity because they're, quote-unquote, unwhole.
Right, exactly.
Frankly, that's not helpful to any of those who suffer from these ailments.
Yes.
They are still people, so normalizing them with the other regards... because they are,
right,
is a vital step. But there's always some extra to compensate for the difficulty.
Yes.
Wheelchair-bound folks need ramps or a kind and strong soul to help them upstairs. Blind folks have their canes to swipe around on the path and get a better sense of what's ahead, or
Yes.
have to learn Braille. Quick pause to note, dang, that means every single alphabet needs their own Braille system.
Do they?
Mind blown.
Do they? Is Braille based...
Arabic characters...
Is it based off Arabic characters? I thought it was based off of it. I thought it was its own language.
Okay, you know how Arabic is written and it's actually like read from right to left rather than left to right?
Oh, well, so they use the same
Braille. If you do Braille, then theoretically you'd have to write the words that way. Japanese has their own Braille.
Okay. Well, then in that case, that makes sense. But otherwise, it's not like Braille is just literally the letters. That's what I thought you meant, though.
No, well, and they also have numbers too, but like Braille by itself, every subsect of language is probably going to need their own because the characters aren't necessarily in common.
Right.
That's
Or the way they write their characters is basically how it is. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway, deaf folks will need to know and utilize sign language.
Yes.
Which again, every language has their own by necessity.
Yes.
In addition to being less capable to react immediately to a big ruckus that they can't hear.
Right.
You start seeing people running in the opposite direction, and you might figure they're running, but you don't know why if you can't hear this gigantic robot stepping through the street. Sorry, that was a very specific example.
Feel the vibrations.
You might be able to, because your other senses are usually heightened in the absence of one.
Giant hovering robot.
Like something that might, I didn't have this in my notes, but it's worth mentioning that as an experience to just kind of to see the world through the back of your eyelids, that is not seeing it, you'll find that your other senses are typically more heightened, even in a normal person.
Well, that's why Daredevil's such a good lawyer, right? Because you can hear the heartbeats of those that are lying.
So he can tell if they're lying or if they're not.
Yeah,
lying.
like that's the justification they have, because he's blind.
So your other senses try to compensate.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, they are capable of dealing with their own crosses. We don't need to pity them just because they have a cross to bear. Anyway, obviously, all of these ailments, these diagnoses, affect in different ways. So it's on you to know what each means for the character who has such an ailment.
Right, exactly. And I think, like a lot of inclusivity, sometimes all you need is to show a person with a particular physical ailment and treating it like it's nothing unordinary.
Yeah.
Like, they're just one of the characters. If it's an injury, there can be a whole story behind it. Why is that guy missing a leg? Why does that person only have 3 fingers on their left hand? Mm-hmm. Like, if they have diagnoses that they're born with, then you can find ways to incorporate them into the plot without degrading them or calling them out. Like a good example from recent memory is Godzilla vs. Kong. What else would I bring up?
Of course.
Which has a little deaf girl from the tribe that was on Skull Island. She has a special relationship with Kong, and he protects her, and she's his voice of reason. She speaks sign language through sign language with her caretaker, which is not. It's a fictional sign language because it's not. She's from the fictional.
From like a fictional island or something. Yeah.
She's from the Iwi tribe. I do not know if that's real. I'm assuming it's not, but it might.
It's way too close to Kiwi, but I don't know.
I don't know, but anyway, well, I'm assuming it's not real because they say in the movie that this storm system that surrounded the island, went expanded inward too much, and they wiped all of them out but her. So
yeah,
so it's probably not real.
Probably not.
Well, watch as someone's like, oh, actually, it's very real, and I'm very offended.
If you want to get in touch with us, please let us know that you misinterpreted Godzilla vs. Kong.
Anyways, she speaks through sign language with her caretaker, but then, spoiler alert, it's revealed Kong also understands sign language and can even perform some of it himself.
Fun interruptions, by the way. I remember there was a character generator thing. I think we talked about, like, you can create... you can randomize a story, like where somebody has a scar and the story behind it, and it just prompts you to do that. Do you remember that episode?
Yes! I do remember that.
I just thought of that why does the person only have 3 fingers on their left hand?
That's true.
There's a whole story. Not that you have to tell it,
right?
But surely somebody's curious, and you need to know. Anyway, the other thing about physical disabilities, I very recently learned that those people who are born to deaf parents but are not are apparently called CODA. It's an acronym for Child of Deaf Adult.
Okay.
The more you know.
I didn't know there were words for like that. I thought it was just limited to Harry Potter stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there are words for just about anything in those communities. It's whether we know them or not.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, but that makes sense. Yeah, and my friend of mine from the coffee shop I used to work at that shall not be named for comedic reasons. She has 2 deaf parents, so
Oh.
but she is not deaf. So
So she would be a coda in
yep,
this
so
case.
she does sign language with them back and forth, and so yeah.
I mean, that is really cool that being sign language capable. There was one gal at the town office I worked at in Japan who was hard of hearing, not completely deaf. She had hearing aids, but she was fluent in sign language for obvious reason. And
Right.
so there was one time we literally saw somebody come in who was. And she immediately came over and proved why she was so valuable to the town by doing the whole sign language thing. And I was
Right.
just in awe.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I'm amazed by those people, the interpreters who can do it on the fly with a speech.
Good Lord.
I just
Try translating a sermon at church, and it's like, holy mackerel.
Ugh,
Just doing it into a regular spoken language is bad. Sign language? Woof.
that one part of Ratchet and Clank where you first meet Nefarious and then Lawrence
I was
there.
doing the...
And it's all ridiculous stuff. Like, too long we have suffered under the bigotry, the stupidity, the squishiness, and foul stench. Like, it's just all these little things. It might be a little offensive, but it's so funny. Anyways, another example, a particularly scary one, a much more serious one, is in this recent disaster movie, Greenland. Have you heard of Greenland?
I've heard of the country, but not the film.
Yeah, it has Gerard Butler in it. It's actually, I heard, quite good. It's a pretty good disaster movie, I've heard. But it's about a barrage of meteors. At first, they think it's just going to pass the Earth and it's going to be really cool. It turns out they're going way closer than they expected, and some of them are going to hit Earth, including one that's like the one size of the one that killed the dinosaurs. And it's way too close for them to do anything about it. They're just going to have to go to bunkers and try and ride it out and get to these bunkers in time. So the main family has a kid with diabetes.
Oof.
And so he has to bring his insulin. And he also has to get through government officials who, in order to keep humanity alive and well enough to recover, they would probably reject him for a disease like that. You're probably just going to have to let this kid die.
Let's not pass those genes into the pool, is their thought.
Well, and also, we don't want to allocate resources to save someone who is probably going to die anyways. And
For
when we
what
can
it's-
save people who would be, yeah.
For what it's worth, I believe that diabetes, I believe it is something that is inheritable, like you inherit a higher risk, but it's also something that can just develop in later life anyway.
Yeah, no, it's not hereditary, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so they have to work to sneak him through and other stuff, and it makes the movie much more intense. And make sure he brings his insulin, because how could they make more? That's the issue they don't really talk about. It's scary stuff. It makes the movie a lot more intense and real. So
Well, I mean, the reality of the whole thing is the biggest piece, because these people have struggles on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I think we should get to our next question.
Yes, what is the most important thing to remember when writing characters whose physical realities don't match the average person?
Depending on what stage of life this happened, more people are likely accepting of the diagnosis rather than bitterly cursing the incident.
Yes, true.
Particularly if it's all that person knew, they are likely past the stage of complaining about their diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them will earn our pity just because of all the things they're apparently missing out on, but they probably would prefer not having our pity doled out so blatantly.
Yes, it's true.
A strange tangent in my notes, but this question reminds me of an episode in the little-known show Keitai Investigator 7.
It's a tokusatsu show.
Keitai is in cell phone, by the way, in case you're curious. Elevator pitch for it. A CGI cell phone agents solve crimes happening electronically, operated by partner humans. There are good phones, bad phones, accessory phones. It's delightful.
Sounds delightful.
The renegade phone braver, who goes by 01, stylized like a number, meets this girl who's blind as a result of a car accident.
Yes.
He, yes, a male-coded cell phone,
Okay. Sure, he's really phoning it in.
believes that she should be so angry that he could convince her to help him burn the world. But she tries teaching him to let go.
Oh, really?
She says that for a little while she was bitter, of course, but eventually felt sorry for the driver. By the way, she felt sorry for him without even receiving the letters of apology that he sent monthly because her mother was withholding them.
Wow, okay.
And she wanted to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
Again, prompted by nothing.
Yes.
She just wanted to forgive him, release him of that burden that he was carrying on himself, because she figured he was probably so disturbed by what happened.
Right.
She asks 01 to get in contact with the man, and at the end of the episode, her empathy drives the phone braver to pass on her message of forgiveness to him, which of course is cathartic for the guy who kept running himself into the dust because it was the only way he believed he could even try to atone.
Wow. That's a lot.
Beautiful message, beautiful episode. Anyways, it's relevant because she was already implied as teenage or older when the accident happened, but grew accustomed to how life should be with this diagnosis and didn't bemoan her eternal fate like an able person might suspect upon a similar circumstance.
Yeah, it's like it really is different if you've been born with it versus if you got it.
I mean, if you never knew what it was like to see, how would you care what blindness meant?
And that's just, I really have respect for those people who do get it later and manage to be like, well, there's nothing I can do, so.
Well, it might take a lot of time, and there's going to be a lot of tears, but growing to accept, I mean, that's the 5 stages of, was it 5 stages of grief, and the last is acceptance.
Yes.
So,
I remember hearing about a guy who was born with no arms or legs, except for one deformed little foot where one of his legs used to be. This is a real guy, so and I think I learned about this when I went with my parents to a church service a couple years back. When he was born, the hospital seriously suggested putting him down. Because what kind of life can someone like this live? But the parents refused. And so the person grew up, struggled, had a lot of issues, actually contemplated killing himself. But he overcame, and eventually he learned to be happy and gave out talks to people in schools and other places to encourage them.
Became a motivational speaker.
He did, and to encourage them living the best life that you can. Right. I'll never forget the video where he lets himself fall to the ground, and using no arms and legs other than his little deformed foot, manages to stand himself back up.
That's really incredible.
It is. Point is, these people are human and deserve the joys and pleasures of life we all strive for. Sometimes we forget that, but we should strive not to, especially as writers, when we can have characters that real people can look up to and see themselves in. We can inspire people. So let's do it, shall we?
I appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah.
But to, be on point for the Ritwit, I remember the joke where the child was born with just a head, and the more drinks he had, it popped out limbs. Should have quit while he was ahead. Anyway.
That's so bad.
I'm not telling the rest of the joke. Anyhow, we're laughing. You see, it worked.
Yeah,
But I mean, seriously, we have a responsibility to represent all of these people well.
Right, we do.
Any of the topics we talked about in this set.
But do you think it requires some ingenuity on your part to properly involve these characters in the action, or what devices might you have that change in the name of fully involving this character?
I suspect that you need to plan that stuff in ahead of time. No getting to the climactic scene where everyone's running and suddenly their friend on crutches loses one and can't walk right because there's literally no way for them to manage, without some other plan to resolve that, of course.
Right.
If someone's blind and goes to a facility that isn't friendly to them, no braille on the rooms for an easy example, how does that person navigate the facility if they're alone?
Right.
Some of it could be contrived in, like planning them to be with another character, having the friend turn back to rescue the fallen one, what have you.
Right.
But consider how most facilities are built today, with proper handicap access considered in the blueprints, labeled rooms even in braille, special accommodations for the hard of hearing.
Right.
All of that should be present, unless there's a specific reason it isn't at that one narrative spot.
And it has to be part of the narrative, too. Like, it'd be kind of weird to just kind of shoehorn that in,
Right.
Without, so. But if it's sci-fi, robotic limbs galore.
Prosthetics are great.
Or other fantastic workarounds. Like, was it like in the Lost Years of Merlin, the books that we like, Emery's loses his sight and then learns second
sight, yeah.
Which he basically counteracts it.
But that's not sci-fi.
That's fantasy. It's one of the best parts of the movie Avatar that you love.
Yeah, I love it so much.
Is that the main character is paraplegic, and so one of the thrills of him being in an Avatar is the fact that he can walk again. His first scene in his Avatar body is great and so emotional. First, he wiggles his toes. He stands, and then despite the shots of the doctors trying to tell him to take it slow and get used to his avatar body, he goes outside and runs.
Because that's the first thing I would do.
Yeah, like, you can tell that as a person who has lost the use of his legs that he's really, really wanted this. It's a beautiful scene in a movie that David loves, and he loves the scene because he's not made of stone, is he?
All right, that scene was perhaps the only redeeming feature of it, but okay.
Everyone said it was too good. Nah, it's okay. I get stubborn about my movies I don't like to. In fact, for a later example, listen to an episode coming up where I rag on some poor schmuck. That probably deserves better, except maybe not. We'll find out when you listen to the episode. Anyways,
I'll let you make your own decision.
There are workarounds, particularly in the sci-fi and fantasy genre, but more mundane settings, there are things you can do too, like what you were talking about.
Well, I mean, those aren't even necessarily workarounds. They exist.
Yes.
Right? Like any library that's built anymore, they're going to have handicap accessible entry because people who are stuck in wheelchairs still want to read.
Right.
Same as everyone else. What a shock.
Right, exactly. But what are some things you should avoid when writing these characters?
If they've grown accustomed to the ailment, they aren't going to be sad sacks.
They're not, no.
They will still attempt to live the best they can in spite of their issue or issues. They probably don't want the pity of others, but it's at least expected when they new people come in contact.
Right.
Surely they're tired of hearing the same things, thoughtless lines tossed off by someone who's normal. But they, the affected ones, won't be saying those.
Right.
They don't likely feel super because they know they're working with a tough hand, and they aren't lesser because they don't have all the working parts of a typical anatomy.
Right. That's true.
It'd be wise to remember such, so as not to include those things accidentally, like, oh, if only you could hear, oh, crap.
Right, yeah, that sounds like an awkward can and a half to happen.
Yeah, so just making sure that you write those things correctly. Avoid those that I said. How about you, Donald?
Just don't treat these characters any differently than any other character. They're people like anyone else. Like, you don't need to have others baby them or protect them or whatever. I mean, I guess it depends on the thing. Like, the person with no arms and legs, someone has to feed them.
True enough.
And, like, person with diabetes, they need the
insulin. Need their insulin and every so often.
And if they're kids, they need someone else to get it for them, but eventually they'll hopefully do it on their own. But they know what they're going through, and they know what to do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, don't treat their diagnosis as some sort of superpower either. Like, that can be problematic in the other direction.
Yeah, because apparently having this disability makes you, like, better than every other man.
I mean, I guess they kind of do it with Daredevil, with, like, his hearing and his... But I don't know, that's...
But that's a comic book superhero example. Like, how is that realistic other than just being the way they contrived to make him effective at a job so he can still maintain a secret identity?
I guess. And I guess there's some instance where that is okay to treat like a superpower. But, like, these are real things that real people have to deal with, and they usually suck. Acknowledge that. Show that people are human like anyone else. They've either made peace with it, they work around it, or they are resentful, but they get over it and move on.
I was going to say that here again, it's where they are in the process. If this accident is too fresh, they're not accepting it yet.
No, they're not.
But if they're born with it and you're seeing them as a teenager, they've already figured out how to navigate the world.
Exactly. But thankfully, for writers who don't have the funds to pay a research team, i.e. all writers.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're
big, successful...
Or if you're trading favors, it wouldn't necessarily be funds. It'd be like favors. But
anyways, physical, and our next episode, too. What was this word?
Maladies.
Maladies are codified in such a way that there are plenty of resources around, especially those aimed at helping families who now must take care of the person.
Right. Living
with a blind or deaf person, accommodating a paraplegic, all these major issues will have some of their own sites with guides or support groups which could provide useful information that your characters may need to know. For more, please look at...
We'll talk about a couple here. All of these will be linked in the description. Apologies if we don't have your particular ailment included. We're trying to save ourselves a little bit of time. And I mean, if you're literally suffering from an ailment, you and your family probably already have all the information you need.
Right.
But, for those characters who are going to have failing vision, there is an article from Vision Aware that has emotional support for family and friends of people losing their eyesight. For those of us who have bad hearing, there are a couple of links. One from hearinglink.org about you being near a person with hearing loss. And a couple of others that we'll link in the description as well. If your head's the only thing that moves. By the way, that state of being is called quadriplegic.
Yes.
There's one here from flintrehab.com, caring for a quadriplegic at home.
Yes.
Which allows you some insight into the people around the quadriplegic themselves, obviously less the character per se. And another one that will be linked in the description as well. Now, it is worth mentioning there are sites with basic information about how these affect your character's life and the family that now has to support them. So, of course, cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, and the like. Go Google them, kids. And if you don't know what Google is, Google. No.
How does that work?
I don't know.
And that's the thing. Like, I did bring up that you don't need to have others baby them, but people need to take care of them. But what I mean by babies, like other characters who aren't involved.
Mollycoddling is not allowed.
Yeah, like
it's not forgiven, it's not expected, and it's not desired. But the basic needs that they cannot handle, somebody needs to provide those for them.
Yes, and that's the thing. But that's it for this week, though. A huge thank you to all our patrons so far.
Yeah, if you're interested in checking that out, please go ahead and visit patreon.com/Matthew Donald.
Yes.
There's bonus content for this show. Not as much as for his other show, Paleo Bites. Go take a listen. We appreciate your support.
There's still good stuff. Contact us at mattd@matthewdoncreator.com for any genuine questions to either co-host. You can follow me on social media at MatthewDonCreator on Facebook, at MatthewDon64 on Twitter, and MatthewDon64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because that's how many times I have to flick the white switch in my bedroom every night before bed. Otherwise, the monsters will get me.
Are you sure you're not OCD?
Sure, I've lost several bedrooms to fire damage from the inevitable sparks, but it's worth it to stop the monsters, David.
You really must be OCD that many times.
Exactly 64 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Well, it depends. Is one up and down one, or is it down is one, up is two?
Down is 1, up is 2.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
I'm not a madman, David.
I'm not that bad. And speaking of OCD, we'll get to that and plenty of others next week when we talk about mental diagnoses.
Yes, we will.
So come back. But for now, physical diagnoses, we've talked about trying to include them in your stories. This is the Ritwit, the show where us two twits have twitted ourselves out.
I'm Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David, and we'll see you next time with more. Until then.
Keep writing, get a mask.
Keep washing your hands. Get a vaccine if you
get
have
a vaccine. I was about to say get a mask and wear a vaccine. It's not...
Get a mask, wear a vaccine. It's like save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Yep.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Wait, your college town in Nebraska?
Yes, Nebraska. So of course they weren't prepared for hurricane damage.